Welcome to TJ Militaria. Today we're going to talk about 20mm cartridge cases and the Giles cartoons. I'll jump straight into the 20mm shell casings. Now in front of me I've got 6 cartridge cases. Now they all may look exactly the same as each other, but they're definitely not, because if you actually look at the cartridge cases I've got in my hand now, you've actually got a much shorter neck on here. The reason for this is because this particular cartridge case is for an Oerlikon autocannon. So on the bottom of the shell casing, you've got OEZ, which means Oerlikon loaded with nitrocellulose powder. So this basically was to differentiate the semi-rimmed Oerlikon rounds with the similar looking but not interchangeable 20mm Hispano. Now the Hispano was actually used on the aircraft Spitfire, I believe. And so there's quite a big difference in those. Now if you look at the cartridge case in my left hand, now this is actually an American version. Now on the bottom of here you've got 1942 20mm M2 1A1 SMC, obviously the manufacturer of the cartridge case. Now I'll put them both together. So if you look at the one on the right hand side, which is an Oerlikon cannon shell, and look at the one on the left hand side, you can see the difference. It's pretty glaring. And so you're not going to be loading these into a Oerlikon drum. So yeah, I've got a few of those. I've got a couple that are made at Radway Green, and I've got another that were made at Steeton, Royal Ordnance Factory Steeton. So if you're interested in 20mm cartridge cases, check out the website TJS Militaria and have a look. They're all in good condition. They're for their age, and they're all nicely dated for the Second World War. Now this is one area that I've always wanted to collect for, and I have collected for quite a while. Now the reason I got into Giles cartoons is because my granddad, who sadly passed away now, he was obsessed with Giles cartoons. Now Giles is basically, he came about due to the Second World War, and his ability, well, his knack of sort of mocking the Nazi and Fascist leaders. However, at the end of the war, he didn't have anybody left to write about, because they'd all been killed or disappeared. So basically what Giles did then was he actually used one of the main characters in the story, who's actually on the front here, as a demobbed soldier, who then became known as Dad. Now Dad had a family, and he had a gran who they called Nan. So I'm sure most of you have actually seen this, but the chap here, he died in the sort of the late 80s, but from the Second World War, sort of mid 1944, he was so popular that he was actually probably the driving force behind the Daily Express newspaper. He actually got paid more than the main editor, and he got picked up in his car because his stories were just phenomenal. And he's basically what I would say is the greatest social cartoonist there ever has been, and that's Carl Giles. Now we'll go into this, the first one here. Now you can see on the front of here you've got a depiction of Hitler's bunker in Berlin. So this here is the first edition of the Giles cartoons that basically collated all the ones from the Second World War, 1943 through to 1945. Now on here you can see they're fantastic drawings. They're very in depth. There's a lot going on them. You've got a chap getting bashed on the head here. You've got Cossacks coming in here. You've got Stalin. You've got Adolf Hitler, and you've got all the relevant generals. And you've got Mussolini down here, Muss, and then you've got Herman. You've left that Verdammt door open again. So yeah, that was probably the first actual cartoon that was actually done by, and that was on the 3rd of October 1943. Now going through it, you can see you've got depictions of all specific events that happened in the Second World War, and you've got humorous parts here. Personally, I think our dear Führer is talking out of the back of his neck, and you've got in here you can basically just see 5 or 6 stories within each page of a Giles cartoon. And if you really want to look at what social society was like in the Second World War, always look at the humor and how it was depicted in comic books and in the newspapers, because I find you get a massive amount of information received. So going through, you can see you've got all specific points in. You've got Montgomery mentioned here, 10th of February 1944. You've got mosquitoes. You've got "Can I help you, boys?" You've got Napoleon down here offering to help out the Nazi party. You've got humorous. It's endless. They're a cartoon that you never get tired of. You've got here on the left hand side, you've got Americans, Adolf Platz, a shot down B-17 bomber, and you've got the crew sounding out "Taxi," which is obviously a depiction of what the Americans were like within the Second World War. So keep going on further. You've got this one I like. There he goes, says he's going to get this ruddy invasion over and then get some leave. 14th of May 1944, just before the invasion of France. So the chap here, who you can see running out with the bayonet, he is Dad, and he is the main character in the story along with his family. So keep going through. You've got plenty more humours. You've got pages of it. And you've got, am I mistaken? I did hear one of you give a long, low whistle. There you go. The invasion of France. Arnhem, because that was in September, I believe. And then you've got heading towards the end of the war. And then you've got Fallout, the man who said it's a fiddle when the sergeant major drew a leave pass. And then you're starting to get the soldiers wanting to start demob, heading into 1945, Japan surrender. You've got very heavily influenced by the war because it was brought out as a morale boosting comic. You've got here on the left, I don't care if the war is nearly over. I'm not selling my cab for a $5 for a souvenir. So again, fantastic. The in-depth observations made by this guy are incredible. Goodbye, Sergeant. I must leave you, though it breaks my heart to go, because obviously, you know, most of the people in the Second World War were demobbed at the end of the war. So yeah, that's actually the first one actually there. So I've got a couple of them on the website. They're very difficult to get hold of now. If you're interested, have a look. And then in essence, this carries on. I've got I believe probably 2 examples for every year of Giles. Obviously cartoons. You've got here, you're heading into 1946. You've got the surplus air raid shelters. You're looking at cleaning off Nelson's column. It's carrying on rationing, join the army, soap rations, American and British soldiers, the old Chelsea pensioner jokes there. And here we go. Remember, men, if you want the beer to last out for the rest of the week, make every shot count. This is when people were coming back to the countryside and you know, sort of returning back to normality after the Second World War. So yeah, you've got every major event in here. You've got Suez, Formosa, every single war, every issue, flooding, weather. They're just fantastic, and I can't sell them any more than what I actually got here. So like I said, I'm not going to go on too long about them, but I have got hundreds of them. So if anybody would like to have some, I've got them priced reasonably well. Obviously the first few editions are actually relatively expensive, but well worth having if you really, Giles and your grandparents or your you know, relatives will know about the Giles cartoon. Again here, just a very quick one. 1950s, Britain was full of Americans, and in this particular year they go on about how the Yanks were in Britain. Nothing too bad, but just how they were wanting to buy everything, etc. So I'll leave you with that. So if you want any of these, just check out the website TJS Militaria, and thank you for listening in. And I'll speak to you at the next video. Thank you.